This is the first episode of ThinkMore Labs. Is that what we're calling it? ThinkMore Labs, or is that the?
Labs.
All right. So the idea behind this was, I think we've both been kind of pondering this independently of one another. At least me for years, and really hard for like the past year. You probably the same thing, months,
About that, yeah.
maybe a
Several
year.
months at least.
So this kind of thing is gelled together. Our trip out to Arizona, we kind of seemed like we gelled in the car in the discussion thing, and it seemed like we kept it going pretty well. The only downside is we don't really disagree about a lot of stuff, which is a real
Makes
bummer.
point counterpoint kind of difficult when we can't argue.
We do need an alternate perspective, and that's in the coming episode segments. Hopefully we can find
Yeah, I
somebody.
think that's a goal. That's something that we're going to move toward. Primarily, ThinkMore Labs it's like an invitation to a think tank. We're going to talk about certain topics that are of social importance and probably some controversy. And these are not things that specifically, what we think is what we say, or what we say is what we think. We're just throwing ideas out there, hopefully getting some people to throw in what they think about it, and maybe come up with some solutions.
Saying that, I think the points that I wrote down were a discussion of troubling cultural issues and trends. I know that I'm troubled by a lot of current issues and cultural trends. And then maybe reasoning through the confusing and controversial topics. Hopefully we can get some other perspectives on tape, somebody that maybe bring to light maybe where all this stuff is coming from. And
Right, and being involved in the educational system, one of the things that was really important to me was teaching my students critical thinking skills. And I think that's one of the things that we want to talk about as related to these social issues is, why do people so easily fall onto a bandwagon when it comes to ideas or social perspective, and don't learn to think through things critically for themselves?
critical thinking is hard.
It is. It's very hard. It's something that you have to learn. I think, I don't know about you. You and I are close to the same age. So when I was a kid, I know that it seemed like they taught that to us in school, not saying, sit down here, this is critical thinking and this is what you should do. I think it's the way they presented things to us. They didn't give us answers. They said, here's a problem. Here are some basic, ideas about how to attack the problem. See if you can figure it out. And I don't think we do that enough anymore, because the education system being tied to testing and specifics, rather than teaching kids to figure out the answers rather than just spoon feeding it to them.
Well, you clearly went to different schools than I did. I didn't get anything like that. No.
Well, I grew up in Georgia, so maybe there's that difference.
Alabama schools suck. I've just got to say it. I don't think I've got any kind of critical thinking skills per se outside of science class, which is kind of, that's what science is all about. That's why that's why I call myself a scientist, because that's the way I think.
Right. Well, we're social scientists, and so we have ThinkMore Labs. This is a think tank where we're inviting everybody to be part of it.
Yeah.
Come join us in the discussion. We're going to talk about social concerns, maybe some things that we think, our perspective of that. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to learn, but mostly to get people thinking about things and not just taking everything at face value.
But it's so easy. It's so easy just for you
Absolutely.
to just tell me what to think.
Are we that lazy?
I know most people seem to be. I'm pretty lazy, not when it comes to ideas. I've always challenged people's ideas, though, as far back as I can remember. So
I've known you, 10 years? That's an absolute truth.
that's the thing that that makes my personality most abrasive is people don't like that. People don't like people challenging their ideas.
The devil's advocate.
Yeah. Anything that's opposite me means you don't like me. You don't love me if you don't believe what I believe, even if it's just silliness. So yeah, I've rubbed a lot of people the wrong way just because I go, is that right? Is that what you just said? Is that true?
Well, what I really hope we can do is to challenge people not to be lazy with things that are so important, such as social issues that then become political issues and then drive where this country is going.
Policy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I struggle with the whole political, religious stuff because that's kind of I don't know if that's a well that I want to.
We can talk about people's belief systems and not talk a little bit about religion and how that affects people and how they interpret information. So we may have to get into just some basic belief systems that might drive, or psychological. Let's get into some of the psychological reasons why people need belief systems and how then that affects what they think, how they interpret the news, how lazy or how hard-driven they are to know the truth versus just spoon-feed me information and I'm going to use that to make it from day to day.
I'm curious as to how many people are going to want to come into the lion's den because especially if people know ahead of time that both of us may disagree with them, are we going to be able to get anybody to sit on tape and have an exchange of ideas, or is this too intimidating? Because I would be a little bit apprehensive to be taped, especially.
Yeah, that's true, and I'm not sure that how many people will actually get to come and sit down with us, but I think there'll be plenty of keyboard warriors who'll be willing to say something, and everybody likes to sit back and watch the drama unfold in any situation, right?
Well, I would invite anybody with a well thought out idea to engage. The people that are just screaming.
Yeah, screaming, pointing fingers.
Idiots. You don't know what the heck you're talking about.
Right, and, screaming, pointing fingers, and no science to back you up. I'm probably going to ignore you.
Science. That's a dirty word in some parts of America. So yeah, this goes along with inviting opposing opinions and reasonable discussion. One of the big things for me, I've been working on this for a few months now, is trying to develop some kind of a framework, and I've narrowed it down, I think, to something that's enjoyable. I like the idea of a game show, just because I can't figure out any other way.
You shared that idea with me. I think it's absolutely fabulous.
Well, so if we could find some way of having people sit down in a room and not become overwhelmed with emotion. And if we could figure out that framework, whether it be a game show, I tend to say debates are a little bit too rigid and structured for most people, but if you say game show,
right, you
could have a semi-debate format, but just make it look more like games, and you score points and you lose points based on your behavior.
How you treat each other, and how valid your facts are.
Civility. Yeah, well, there you go. The people I've debated in the past are usually spontaneous debates. I have some facts and figures in the back of my head, in my reality, and they have some in the back of their head. What never happens is real time. Hey, we're talking about a subject, give me your best stuff, it very rarely happens. Somebody gets on Google and says, hang on a second, let me figure this out. And you got 30 seconds to prove your point.
Because they've been lazy. Yep. Someone spoon-fed them that information, someone spoon-fed them that news, and they just accepted it at face value with no input on their part, no work on their part.
Laziness. Back to the laziness thing.
It is. I think that we've just become lazy. We think that anybody with a certificate or a degree or a certain job title is obviously the guru, the be-all to end-all on a topic. And now it's easy enough just to write an article and create a website that looks like news, and you don't know where that information's coming from. And I think that we owe it to ourselves to know the facts, to investigate. When somebody posts something on social media and it gets our ire up, look and see where it came from. That information could be coming from someone who's trying to get you fired up about a certain topic, to raise the voice about something, and they may have an ulterior motive. It might not be about the truth. I usually start with looking at the date on an article. I read articles that are posted all the time. It looks like they just came out today, and they're 4 years old.
So this is our first real episode talking about debunking crazy ideas, and the crazy idea that we want to start out with is a topic called chemtrails. It's the basis of chemtrails. If you don't understand, the basis of chemtrails is kind of a conspiracy theory, because that's the closest thing I can tell you. And most of the people that believe in it are conspiracy theorist people that believe that the government is out to do something, or somebody's out to do us harm.
So what you're saying is that chemtrails are not the only conspiracy they believe in most cases?
Probably not. Most of the people that I've talked to, but it kind of fades over into the general population. So conspiracy theorists tend to have these wacky ideas, and if they talk about them enough, then other people start believing them that may or may not have any kind of bad relationship with reality, like the conspiracy theorists do. They'll attach themselves to anything as long as somebody tells them the government's doing it and that they're out to get us. But the basic idea behind chemtrails are contrails. They think that there's a difference. It's not water vapor that's being frozen in the upper atmosphere coming out of the exhaust of planes. It is something that's being sprayed by commercial airliners. For the purpose of? It's a wide variety of mind control, population control, all kinds of crazy theories.
Weather control.
There was a paper in the mid-90s about controlling the weather for military purposes, but it was kind of a wacky, there's all kinds of wacky research papers that go on, but somebody took this and said, aha! You're trying to control the weather by throwing stuff in the atmosphere, which is not that crazy, really, if you think about it, because, we've been seeding for rain for, 70, 80 years.
Okay, so this is like a high-tech mechanical rain dance.
Yeah, it's not that far-fetched as a basis, but it's back to that whole, it's on the same level as the moon landing conspiracy, where NASA and hundreds of thousands of people have conspired to make us think that we went to the moon, and for the past 60 years, those hundreds of thousands of people have managed to, keep that secret where, we can't keep.
Right, and I think that right there is one of the most important things that you can say is, how many people does it take to hide a conspiracy? Well, the bigger the conspiracy is, the more people, and there is no way that 100,000 people can stay quiet about something like that.
Well, the thing that's disturbing most to me is the people that I talk to that have this in their head are not dumb people. These are not are not low IQ clowns. These are people that have pretty high IQs. I would say above average, if not well above average.
Right, I remember sitting around the campfire and thinking, I really can't believe these people I've spent the week with that I thought, had pretty high IQs and were pretty smart are actually saying these things to me.
Well, funny thing that the way this happened, I've heard the chemtrails thing before, and I always kind of thought it was a joke. I'm doing an interview with a guy at his campsite talking about his solar oven, and towards the end of the interview, when I'm getting ready to walk away, he's talking about how it's affected by the chemtrails. The cooking time and the temperature in the oven is actually affected by the chemtrails. And I thought, you mean contrails, right? And he said, no, chemtrails. And it went on to the, you think it's a joke, and no, they've been doing this since the 80s. It's like, and I really tried. I tried to reach out and go, come on, man, you know that's just condensation, right? Oh no, it's different. Look up there at that plane. And he's pointing to a plane that was probably flying at 35,000 feet, and the other ones were 20,000. And he's saying, see, it's disappearing behind him. And I'm like, yeah, well, probably any other plane that's flying up that high too. Wouldn't it make more sense to spray stuff at a higher altitude? Wouldn't it disperse? Anyway, there was no reaching this guy, but perfectly intelligent guy that just kind of wandered off. But then I brought it up at the campfire, and then almost half the people we were talking to either knew it and supported it, could tell you a little bit about what it was, but couldn't tell you a lot, but it had penetrated their brain.
I remember seeing one person around the campfire almost like he'd kind of heard it in passing but not paid much attention to it, and as the other people were talking about it, I could see in his face he was beginning to buy into this.
Just jump on board of the train. Yeah, that looks good. Let's go. And here we go, off into insanity.
Yeah, no thought process on your own. No, yeah, I need to look into this. For me, I can't say that I had heard it before. I mean,
that's most of the people.
It's something that I would have heard if I had heard it. It's something that I would have just not paid attention to.
Well,
so
I think
let's start with me saying I had never heard of it. We'll just make me a chemtrail virgin.
I think the further away from big metropolitan areas, the less you're going to look up in the sky and see. Well, especially out west, there's really no cloud cover out west. So if you see, a crisscross patterns of trails in the sky, it's easy to say chemtrails because you don't really see that back east as much. You see, we got clouds all the time. If you see a streak across the sky, it's behind clouds, so it's not as prominent. But out there, you see a crisscross patterns of
if you just look at the flight patterns of major airports, I mean, you'll see exactly how many airlines fly crisscross across the country every single day.
That was my first thing is. It's easy to tell that. You could put. I used to have an app on my phone that could tell me. You see a plane that's flying over. Right. It will tell you the flight and where it's going.
Oh, it's still available. I mean, you can still do that.
So you can still do that. So if it's not the government, it's these commercial pilots that said, okay, yeah, put that extra 50 tons of dangerous chemicals in my plane. I'm gonna spray it on my family. And everybody I know, whatever it is.
Yeah, but they're in the government, they're rich, they've got connections, they have the antidote for whatever it is they're spraying. Right? I mean...
It's easy for me and you to debunk, but why is it so hard to change people's ideas with things like this?
I think that culturally, that people have always needed an explanation. They need an answer for why things are the way they are. I think they need to know why things are different now than they used to be. What has changed? Why is there less rain? Why is there El Nino? Why are there more destructive hurricanes than before? Why is there more rain? It's been raining here for a month? So that seems unusual to them, and they need some sort of an explanation, and a conspiracy is better than no explanation, or spending the time to find out why things are different, or what has changed, or if it really has changed.
You mean learning about science and stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly. I think a conspiracy is a lazy way to explain things.
Well, I wonder if it's just truly a failure in the education system where I don't know. I would like to attend a classroom right now where they're teaching the difference between contrails and chemtrails. I wonder if that's even going on, or if there's actual critical thinking going on.
I think you'll find it in colleges. I don't know that you'd find it in high schools.
The colleges, I think I worry more about colleges now than I do anything.
That's true. You got into a good physics or meteorology class, meteorology class.
Any of yours?
Yeah. exactly.
Oumuamua.
Hey, maybe we could.
Aliens. That's where we get. Hey.
Maybe we could get James Spanda to chime in and talk about contrails, chemtrails, and
Comets.
yeah,
Alien infested
exactly.
comets.
How the weather affects, and that's the thing. So talking about contrails or chemtrails affecting the weather, when truly it's the weather that affects the presentation of the contrail. How cold it is, how much moisture is in the air. That's the science of it all.
Well, I think the big thing is realizing that there is a much bigger difference in what happens with that moisture out west, because it's just so much more visible out there. I mean, just say you don't have a position one way or the other, but to have somebody like this guy going, yeah, man, they just, you know, you're pointing out and you're like, oh yeah, wow, there are a lot of tracks and they're huge. I mean, they start out like this and they go
different to me. I mean, but I've always been the kid that laid on the trampoline and watched the sky, you know, and thought about what is that, you know, what causes that. I've always been that kid that questions everything when I was growing up. So it doesn't seem that different to me than it did back in the 80s, which is what the claim is that there were no contrails.
Yeah, there were no contrails in the 80s, but I remember it distinctly. And the guy that was saying this is like, no, I got a really good memory. He was probably maybe 6 years older than me, but I'm sitting here going, no, I remember.
That's a really good scientific base. His memory. Yeah, I think if it's in his memory, we ought to go to it.